Welcome to the Strategy Sherpa Show, a series of organic discussions between hosts David Chavez and a variety of notable business leaders centered around their most significant failures and how they handled those challenges, so listeners can learn from their most teachable moments and apply the lessons to their organizations. Now, here's your host, David Chavez.
Hey everyone, this is David Chavez. This is the Strategy Sherpa Show, and welcome to the show this week. We're excited to have Noah Johnson with us, and he's going to be talking a little bit about his book, and we'll introduce him in just 1 second. This Thursday, I'll be doing a workshop, a scaling up workshop in Austin. We have a few seats left. I think we have 1 seat left. So if somebody's interested, get online and go ahead and sign up for it. We're going to have a small group. We had a small venue because we had to switch venues at the last second. So it'll be an intimate place, and we'll be working on the companies that are coming to the actual workshop. And it is a workshop. It's not a seminar. So we're not just going to be talking at you. We're going to be learning a little bit about your business and how we can help you, and directly how does scaling up apply to you and your company. So that should be pretty exciting. And then afterwards, one of my partners is going to be doing a workshop on cash, and he's going to be talking about the 7 key financial levers that impact cash. And you don't want to miss that. That's on April 4th from 1 to 2 p.m. Central Time, and that's Warren Sager. And then Ted Servata and I will be doing another scaling up workshop in Portland, Oregon on May 8th. And that should be really good. Good time of year to go to Portland. So if you're looking for a little bit of a good weekend, that would be a great time to head out to Portland because it's really nice during that time of year. The weather's starting to change to the summer, so it's really nice. So we'll come back to some of those things in a little bit, but let's get started with Noah. Noah, welcome. You're on mute, so there you go. Okay, perfect.
Thanks for having me, David. Very excited to be here.
All right, well, share a little bit about yourself with the audience. You and I were both in the military, so that enticed me quite a bit about having you come join us join the show, and just share a little bit about your background.
Yeah, so I was in the Air Force mid-2000s, did the active duty for a bit, stationed at Davis-Monthan Air Force Base in Tucson, and then I went into the reserves back to Minnesota, where I'm originally from. A lot happened between then and now. Now I work in corporate and investment banking as an examiner. That's essentially an internal regulator for the bank. So I review the loans that they're originating and ensuring that they are up to snuff. And fortunately, I work for a very good bank. They do not provide any support or anything else in this endeavor. I won't go too much into that, but I wrote my book, Good Enough, recently. I was having my daughter in April and February. I just sat down at my computer and it kind of flowed. It was inspiration, I think, with her coming on the way. But so a key part of this, you got to read the meh, like Larry David, like meh, like how do you like my haircut? It's great. You know,
that's how I took it when I first read it. I was like, that's a great thing to have at the very beginning of a book. All right. So go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah. So Good Enough just contains the lessons that I, the veteran, learned from the private sector. The book is to help you, the reader, determine your standard while they're acknowledging there are many ways to provide value. For example, we've all heard of subprime lenders. I've worked for a subprime lender without knowing it and didn't realize that providing value to them meant something different than driving value for an investment grade lender. The subprime lender is minimally concerned with borrower quality, and driving value for this business is to grow the portfolio as quickly as possible. An investment grade lender would use much more discretion. So that's kind of a key part of the book, is to understand what others want. And that helps you create your standard.
Right, right. So I love the title, and if I could share my screen, hopefully the sharing screen gods will let me share my screen, but I can't. I was going to show the cover of the book because it's has a little thing. It says "meh, good enough," but it says "meh, good to great enough." And you cross out good to great, and you make it a red color. Oh, there it is. All right,
Yeah.
perfect.
You got the
Show it
book
right there.
right here.
So yeah,
The inspiration for this was the book Good to Great by Jim
right.
Collins. That, a great book, but instead of going to great, it's good enough, so that's, yeah, the great is crossed out. Meh, good enough. Looks like handwriting, someone scribbled it out. That's the idea.
Yeah.
And it's not a book about giving up. It's not a book about it is a book about failure, but learning from those failures and building resiliency and creating that standard.
Yeah, yeah, and really interesting cover there. So let's get into it a little bit now. What we do on the Strategy Sherpa show, and I think you know this because we had a little bit of conversation right before because you watched a couple of the shows. We talk about things that we messed up, like decisions we messed up. At the time when we made those decisions, they were a great decision. In all of our wisdom, we thought that it was just the perfect decision, and then everything went sideways on us. And it provides a lot of learning, right? And so what we're trying to do is help other entrepreneurs out there with the learning part and understanding that mistakes are part of the game, right? Of growing a business. So share with us what is yours that you wanted to share, and we could talk a little bit about the book too. Hopefully we'll weave some of the book into this conversation.
Hopefully, yeah. And this is actually what I appreciate most about the concept of your show is the learning from failure. In my experience, I've found that organic success is often due to subtractive and not additive factors. In other words, learning from the negative experiences or failures, and you learn which mistakes to avoid. And this is a key concept working in banking. It's a key concept in risk management. Banking is the business of risk management and needs to be, because the losses are outsized to the gains. In lending, you may only net 2% on a loan, but you may lose 100%. And therefore, knowing which mistakes to avoid is extremely relevant. And the concept is truly applicable to entrepreneurs broadly.
Yes, most definitely. Most definitely. And I love how you just said that too. I think a lot of people, when they're getting a loan or something, they look at it from their perspective of what they're paying, but you also have to look at it from the banker's perspective of their risk that they have out there. A lot of times 2% is a healthy return on a loan. And because you're borrowing the money to lend to them, in a sense, from your investors, or from you may truly be borrowing it at a lower rate and then re-lending it back out, but the risk is still yours. Like if that person doesn't perform on that loan, then you have an obligation to pay back your investors, or you lose that money on your side. So
Exactly. And not to go too much into banking, but you said, you hit on the head, is that 2% sounds great. Most consumers probably think, oh, 2%, I don't pay 2%, but the bank has a cost. They have to borrow to lend to you. So that's where that net figure comes from. And so when you pay 8, 9, 10% maybe nowadays, that's because the bank's paying 6% or so.
Yep. All right, so let's jump into it. You had something that came up in your life of as a business person. Why don't you share that with us?
Yeah, so the biggest mistake I will say that I made was having too many options, and that led to worse decisions. And this is actually a real concept called decision fatigue. So it's the idea that more options lead to worse decisions, and we become overwhelmed often when this is a factor with too much information to effectively choose when presented with too many options. And this is a sister concept to analysis paralysis. We all know that one, being unable to make a decision when overloaded with information. While decision fatigue, you can make the choice, but it's the wrong one. And that happened in my life. So what I found was, to avoid it, you must make a decision. You have to make the decision, stick to it, specialize, and try to reduce your other options the best you can. And that's what one thing in my book that does. It discusses how to analyze your choices correctly, so that when you do decide on your one thing, you make it a decent choice. It's a good enough choice. It's not going to be a great, it might not always be a great choice, but it'll be a good enough choice. You know, in the first few chapters of the book are really focused on decision making. The first chapter is just a quick purview into the good enough concept. You know, so if you make it through those first chapters, you'll have a good idea of what I'm talking about, what a good decision means, and it all depends on you. So, decision fatigue. When I left the military, my options were broad. I had a great track record, early promotions. I was going back to school. It really felt like the sky was the limit. And I made a number of key mistakes here, but the underlying factor was having real options and never having ever made a distinct choice. In the first few years after separating, my degree was nonspecific, and I tried various fields, photography, filmmaking as an amateur, restaurant industry, entrepreneurship, personal banking, and the Secret Service. I never went into the Secret Service, but I did have an offer from them that I didn't choose, and I go into that in the book because I thought I was going to be a millionaire starting another business. So I turned down that offer. Very big mistake. Did not become a millionaire. So and to illustrate the uselessness of my degree at the time, I received a Bachelor of Arts in Individualized Studies. It doesn't get less specialized than that. But for the record, I did return later.
Hold on. Just for the record, what is that degree?
I don't know. It had a focus on psychology and media arts. So I worked public affairs in the Air Force, and I was a photographer. That was kind of like my specialty. And so I tried to use that experience combined with screenwriting and some film classes with psychology, had a dream of becoming a big-time filmmaker. Surprisingly, it doesn't happen in Minneapolis. Not the best place to start a film career. Didn't know that at the time, but really, and I could go, and the book goes more into it, but it's the idea that I didn't really realize that the degree mattered. I thought, just get a degree. I took a hodgepodge of higher level, bachelor's level classes, created a great narrative that sounded good to me at the time, and focused on that. But later I did return, and we'll talk more about my return to school for finance, but I did return later. But decision fatigue affected me for years before this.
And what do you mean by decision fatigue? Help the audience out with that a little bit, because I think that this is very real inside of businesses. I see it quite a bit. And I loved how you described it.
Yeah, decision fatigue. So further in my book, I detail a time in my life, and I'll go to a different time here. But in the book, I talk about I was going to school, I was working at a restaurant, I was applying for the Secret Service, which is an incredibly effortful task. It took months and lots of paperwork, lots of things. And trying to start a business and making films, short films, for no money, just for fun. But, doing all of these things during a time period where I'm trying to start a business and trying to apply for the Secret Service, and none of it worked out. The business didn't go anywhere. I declined the offer for the Secret Service after months of effort. And I continued working at a restaurant that really had no future for me at. And so that's what decision fatigue is that facing all of those opportunities, I chose incorrectly.
Okay. So I'm gonna stop you, and I'm gonna keep you right there. And then we're gonna pick this up right back after the break, because we are a live radio show. We have to stop and take a break real quick. But I have Noah Johnson and his book, good enough. Do you like how I did that? I even practiced that actually. And we're going to be back talking to him in just a moment. And he was just talking about all the decisions he had to make and how he didn't make the right decision. Stay tuned because you want to hear what he has to say next. This is David Chavez. This is the Strategy Sherpa Show. We'll be right back.
Welcome back to the Strategy Sherpa Show with David Chavez. Have a question for David or his guests? Join us on the show at 866-472-5790. That's 866-472-5790. Now, back to the show.
All right, this is the Strategy Sherpa Show. This is David Chavez. We have Noah Johnson here with us, and he is right in the middle of getting ready to divulge some personal secrets in his life that he had to admit, and he divulges some of that in his book, Meh, Good Enough. I have to say it like that every time. I just love saying that. When I first got I actually bought the book, and when I first got it, I was like going, oh my gosh, I love the name of this. So Noah, coming back in, let's pick up where we left off.
Thanks, David. Yeah, talking decision fatigue, too many choices, making bad decisions. So I faced decision fatigue for years, and I'll focus on the early to mid 2010s. This is kind of my worst period for this issue. And I had just graduated with an arts degree, had no tangible business skills. I was working a personal banking job at a credit union, and my dad proposed starting a new landscaping company. In this period, I was open to anything because I was really struggling to make ends meet. My dad knows landscaping. He specialized early on, but he did not pass that on to his kids. I mentioned my arts degree, and all the kids got arts degrees with no tangible skills. And when I say tangible skills, I'm talking in-demand things like accounting, marketing, Microsoft Excel, data analysis, coding, etc. And my parents were very working class. My dad was a sole proprietor, very skilled, but not a great businessman. And that's okay. But he had his good years, and he had a lot of heartache and bad years, and he didn't want the same future for his kids. My mom was a stay-at-home mom for much of my childhood, as many were in the 80s and 90s, and part-time through my teen years. So their career perspectives were kind of limited, and that's okay. Everyone's got their their things, but they knew college mattered, and they pressed that upon us. They wanted us to have a better life, but the focus wasn't on the major. It was just go to college. And this comes back to a key concept in my book of materiality. As a CPA, you understand materiality. And materiality, college matters, yes, but not all programs are equal. We got to think, the material differences in career prospects for a finance major, which I completed later, and an individualized degree focused on psychology and media arts. That was my first degree. So at this time I graduate, I have no specialty. I believe I'm educated, but I'm working an easy entry, low skill, relatively low paying job. My dad proposes starting this landscaping company, doing something bigger and greater, and we go off selling jobs. He was operations, I was kind of the business side. I spent my time developing the business, but I had no passion for landscaping. It was just another option I took advantage of because of the prospects for making more money. Mm-hmm. Anyway, we get a tremendous opportunity for a maintenance contract with the homeowners association about a year and a half after starting the business, and it just takes off. In the 2014 to 15 period, we had about 9 employees at our peak, and we're doing a few $100,000 in revenue. We were very stressed out, and neither of us were happy about a year into this. Uh-huh. As I said, I had no passion for landscaping. My involvement was greed driven, which isn't good.
Healthy? No, not healthy.
not healthy at all. And as a sufferer of decision fatigue, I didn't know what to do. I'm working essentially 2 full-time jobs, trying to manage a new marriage and a new home I just purchased. So there's some financial stressors in my life too. and even more ridiculous, I started a small skateboard company during this period. So I'm doing all these things. It really, really just, when I think back to it, I just go, what was I thinking? I don't know how did I think I could handle all of this? And we're trying to hold weekly events with the skateboard company while I'm doing this and working a full-time job. Now, I did have a passion for skateboarding. I'd done it for 20 years. I was good at it. We had some early success with that company, but nothing that would ever allow me to work full time. So it was definitely more of a hobby. But it was also the only thing I enjoyed during the period. And it was the first domino to fall as I gave it up when my other money-making activities demanded more of my attention.
Right.
So unsurprisingly, working about 80 hours a week and being pulled in a dozen different directions isn't conducive to a sustainable career or business. We hit a point where a decision must be made, my day job or the landscaping company. By this time, my mental capacity is destroyed, and I let a lot of skaters down already by dropping the skateboard company out of the blue. My relatively new marriage is in shambles by this time. With all
Because you're working so much, right?
Oh, I'm working so much. I'm stressed out. I got no capacity for really, being a good partner in any regard. And it goes both ways too. I talk in my book a lot about fitness, but in this time to focus on myself, it's really, just so stressed out, so much time and effort being pulled in a dozen different directions. My mental capacity is nil. So I got to make a choice, right? I got to say, do I leave my full-time job or do I leave the landscaping company? And I don't let either go. My now ex-wife hates the idea. She hated the idea of the entrepreneurial life, and presses me to stay with my day job. My dad presses me to continue helping him because he couldn't do it on his own. It was a big project. It was things were working. It was going. If we had more of a stomach for it, I think it would have been probably going a little bit better. And maybe if I wasn't working another full-time job too. So I end up sticking with both, despite knowing that I'm burning out. And so the primary mistakes here are, one, not fully investing in the company. And two, honestly, involving myself in something I had little passion or specialization in.
Right, right.
So
You had you weren't real passionate about the business to begin with. You even said at the beginning you were doing this. It almost sounds like ego, money, right?
Yep.
So money and ego play. You grew up poor, so you had a little bit of that. Well, you didn't grow up poor, but you didn't grow up rich either, but you sort of middle class. And you didn't really know why you were going to college, so there was no why behind anything you were doing. Is that a fair comment?
Oh, that's absolutely fair. Yeah, the why was missing. And that's a key part that I go into in the book. Third chapter, value. It's not financial value, it's what do you value? And at the time I did not have a robust understanding of what I meant, what I wanted. Money is not a goal.
Right.
So
it's a result of believing in something so deeply that the passion drives that, right?
Exactly. And when you have passion for something, and what I've learned later, and as I moved into something that I had passion for, the money kind of is a result. When you're good at something, when you can drive that value, and driving value is another part of the book, a key part of the book. But it's when you drive value, you're bound to do all right. You might not ever get rich. It doesn't need to be rich. You can live a pretty good life if you know what you're doing. And in the book, I use the example of an artist. So we all know artists tend to not make a lot of money. But someone who can create art, sell it to willing buyers, that is fulfilling. To know that your work is appreciated is a very fulfilling prospect. So it's not about the money, but it's about doing something and knowing your why. So you hit it right on the head. So Yeah, so so we're working on this. We have this big contract. We're doing other jobs. So over the next 6 months, after I already knew I needed to leave one, our big contract comes up for renewal, and neither my dad or myself were happy. He hated managing employees, and to be honest, he didn't really have the stomach for risk taking or business either. Running a business with employees is much different than the sole proprietor lifestyle he was used to. So when the contract comes up for renewal, we're like, well, let's make it worth it. Screw it. Let's jack up our pricing and shoot for the moon, because we thought it wasn't worth the stress for less.
Right.
I now know that it wasn't worth the stress for more money, but that's how it felt at the time, right?
Yep.
So the HOA that we had the big contract with, they signed a short-term extension. We stuck with it for a bit, and we end up losing the contract entirely a few months later because they essentially used that short-term period to find another provider for less. So by this time, nothing in my life is really working out. I wasn't giving my ex-wife the attention and everything else she wanted. Our marriage is on the rocks. I'm burned out from both work and the company, and I'm still working both because I just couldn't commit to one or the other. And I snapped one day. I quit / lose everything. So
you lost everything. You snapped.
So not too maybe I made it a little more dramatic than it was, but I submit my resignation at the credit union.
Yep.
I start reducing time I put in the landscaping company. So I leave my job. I'm exploring different career opportunities. I realize maybe the entrepreneurial life isn't everything it's cracked up to be. I have a great appreciation for people who stick with it and love it and can handle the ups and downs. But I found out it wasn't really for me. So as a personal banker, I had gotten some mentorship from a few commercial lenders, and they laid out the path for me to move into an analyst role in banking. So I take some time off. I enroll in finance courses. I explore internship opportunities and start working toward that one goal, to become a commercial banker. And this was the beginning of things working out for me. I cut it all up, cut everything else out, focused on the one goal. And so a few months later, I sell / gift my ownership interest to my dad. It wasn't worth much because we lost our largest contract, but he stuck with the company for the next several years, which worked well for him. And while I moved into finance and commercial banking.
Okay. So really interesting line there. Let's pick this up right where we left off right now. We're going to take a little bit of a break, and then we're going to come back, and I want to talk to you and ask you a few questions about what you just talked about, because I think it's really important what you're saying. And I think all entrepreneurs end up struggling with a little bit of what you're talking about right now. So I love this book, and I love the concept of what you're trying to do, and trying to help people understand that chasing too many squirrels, or as Jim Collins calls it, foxes, is not helpful, right? So that's basically what you're saying. We'll be right back. This is Strategy Sherpa Show, and we have Noah Johnson. We'll be back in a moment.
Welcome back to the Strategy Sherpa Show with David Chavez. Have a question for David or his guests? Join us on the show at 866-472-5790. That's 866-472-5790. Now, back to the show.
Hello, everybody. This is David Chavez. This is Strategy Sherpa Show, and I have Noah Johnson here, and we're talking about his book, Good Enough. I like to say it that way every time because that's the title of it. And Noah just shared with us quite a bit. I mean, Noah, you went deep pretty quickly on the show here. I mean, I like it. It's really, I think that as you're talking about it, and where I got a little captivated when you were talking was the pain that you probably felt going through all of this. I think a lot of entrepreneurs have been through what you're talking about. You decided to get out of entrepreneurism altogether. Some of us stick through it and get to the other side, and some of us stay in it for our whole lives, what you're talking about, and that craziness. So I think that growing a companies, several companies, I have had cycles that I go through almost in growing every company, just like you're saying. I think that one of the things business owners have to do when they start a business is realize that their first idea that they had for the business may not materialize exactly the way that they thought it would, right? And then the second thing is so I have to have a lot of variety right at first, but then there comes a time when I have to quit chasing so much of the variety and settle myself down into what I'm actually going to do. And Jim Mullins wrote a book called Getting to Plan B. And I love the book because he's describing that most businesses don't end up where they start. And I think that that's what you were talking about a little bit, but you were talking about the primary mistakes. You had said involving myself in business, which I had no passion or specialization in. And I think that this is really critical when you're talking to business owners about a business. Passion is the driver, right? And so go for it. Go for it. You had something to say.
Oh no, yeah, no, absolutely. Passion, and I'll go into how I broke free from the decision fatigue that I faced, and started choosing and specializing. But really, the passion is what helped me propel myself. I got into something that I love doing, and you're right. I did not have the stomach for entrepreneurship. I admire people who stick with it. This is not a book about quitting. This is not a story about quitting. This is a book about resilience and finding the thing that you're meant to do. And the people who stick with it are truly admirable. My dad ran his sole proprietorship for a long time. He stuck with it. He's good at what he does. And so I don't want to, make it sound like it was something different.
No, I didn't get that when I read the book either. I didn't get that this wasn't a valuable experience. And I think that you're speaking to a lot of entrepreneurs and trying to help them with the huge problem that they really have.
And absolutely. And the key thing is, so many entrepreneurs do start their side hustle is the big name, right? But you have to have a plan. You have to know, like, hey, if this works out, I got to leave my job. And the company might not fully compensate me the way my job was, but once things start rolling, once the ball starts going, you got to roll with it. And if you don't, you're going to burn out like I did. And that's the key part of the failure, is that I was burnt out. And because I was chasing too many squirrels or foxes, chasing too many everything. And you could go so much more granular, even when you're talking about the business, it's what type of work do you want to do? Yes. if we're doing landscaping, are we doing projects? Are we doing maintenance? Are we doing plowing? Are we, you could really, you could think about it as a portfolio of services. But as things start developing, if it's not what you want, your plan B could also be to shrink that and focus more, maybe doing less work at higher margin. So there are a lot of options for you. But
I like how you're saying this, because I've helped a lot of companies. Our firm has helped over 280 companies now. And some of those companies that I've personally been involved with, they decided not to scale and decided to micro focus on their niche. And they didn't really care how big they got, just as long as they were staying in their niche and they could be super profitable there. Right?
Exactly. And there's always the battle for growth versus margin. And I think what a lot of companies find, and I worked in commercial banking now for nearly a decade. And when we're talking about a small company that decides to go on a growth path, we see their margins start to decline. So now they're making less money because they're trying to grow. Maybe they break into a new geography and that they got to pay the sales guy X number of dollars extra to take the risk of working for them. And so I've worked with many companies who decided, whoa, that growth was a mistake.
Right.
we lost margin. We're making way less money now because we grew, and there's no sustainable path out of it. And so big is not always better. It's great for if you have public company aspirations, growth by any means necessary might be a favorable strategy. But overall, I think for the small business owner, it's the specialization is really key.
Yeah, I have one client I know I went into and I started helping them, and this guy keeps on talking to me about his revenue, and I was going, I really don't care what your revenue is. I just looking at your profitability and it's 3%, and I don't really think you even need to be thinking about revenue if your profit's 3%. I think what you really need to be thinking about is your profitability of this organization and how you're going to make it. Now, the company has doubled in 3 years, but the profitability went from 3 to 25%, right? And so now he's growing in a healthy way that's not reactive, and it's a lot more focused, because I think what happens a lot of times in business, it's grow, grow, grow. These are all the books everyone's reading, and they think that grow, grow, grow at any cost is the way to go. But I only have so many resources, and especially you grew up like I did. I didn't grow up with a silver spoon in my mouth, right? I couldn't go back to mom and dad if I made a mistake in my business and get some more money. You were actually in business with your dad, so he was down in the trench with you, so you definitely couldn't go back, right? And so we had to work through these things. And I think that what ends up happening is a lot of business owners, they take on too much and add more and more, spreading their resources out so thin. More businesses go out of business from not having enough money than having enough, not enough, right? Am I saying that correctly?
No, that's exactly right. Growth is a major cause of failure, and it's great. If your margin declines temporarily, when you're growing revenue, it's not the worst thing in the world. But there has to be a sustainable path out of it, and that's the key. And when you get stuck in this growth idea, this growth concept, it's growth is not great for any cost. But two, when you're in a growth mindset, you just have to know what the path out of it is, because with growth comes lower margin. And I talk in my book about there's 2 ways to grow a business, and these are very broad, but it's steal market share from competitors, or be part of a growing industry in which you capture some of that growth. And so when you think about it from that regard, if you're capturing market share, how are you doing that? Is it through acquisition, or is it organic? And if it's organic, okay, how are you undercutting the competition, or what is the way in which you're able to steal that competition? And oftentimes it is undercutting, and with that, there is no sustainable path to more profitability.
Right. And Michael Porter talks about this in his article, What is Strategy, out of the Harvard Business Review, because oftentimes people get into pricing wars. And if you're the same as your competitor, then you are competing on price. And in the end, that is a losing game in the end. I mean, unless you have a very good pricing strategy. Walmart uses pricing as a strategy, but it's using that and they have the volume to do that, right? If you don't have the volume, that's probably not a great strategy.
And Walmart's scale is uncompetitive. You can't compete with Walmart on scale.
That's
Target tries. Target does a good job, but Walmart does a great job. And it's really incredible that someone could actually grow a business by being the lowest cost. But most people can't do that. And this is why, and I go into it in the book, but mergers and acquisitions occur in mature industries. When the industry, so we have stealing market share, and we have a growing industry, but when the industry is not growing, then you have to look to, well, how do I get market share? And that occurs often through acquisitions. Yep. So you acquire companies so that you don't have to undercut them. And now you're still growing, and your margin maintains, and it might even grow because now you have a little more power.
Yeah, no, I love it. I love it. Hey, we got a couple minutes left here, and I want to make sure that we leave the listener with an understanding of why I should read your book.
So this book, I'll just say right now, not for everybody, but it is for a certain type of person. It's for the person who's working hard, not getting to where they want to be. It's really for the person, obviously for the veterans, because I think there's different private sector and military incentives, but really it is to understand how to navigate the corporate environment or the private, just the business environment. And this is applicable to absolutely everyone. But it's really, if you're not getting what you want, read the book. I go into a little bit of philosophy, a lot of business concepts. I try to take my financial education. So I do have a finance degree after I got that individualized degree. And I really focused on finance for the larger part of the last decade, and really bring those concepts into the book and try to relate them to different aspects of your life. So I hope it helps. I think it does help. I've heard from others who have read it. They said, "Hey, this chapter was really helpful." And with that, I hope.
Yeah, I would tell you, when I read it, I really enjoyed it. I did have some of those moments where I'm flashing things through my head and asking myself questions. And I think one of the things I liked about the book is that it had me think about the why I was doing some of the things I was doing. And I think that is your objective in the book, is to really get the reader to ask themselves, why are you doing what you're doing? And getting consciousness about that so that you can be better at what you're doing, or so you can realize that maybe that's not the most productive thing that I should be doing. Right. That was the message I got when I read it.
And I talked to my dad. My dad's like, "Oh, I read this chapter, and then I read this chapter. I was skipping around," and I'm like, "Oh, hold on." It's not a linear story, but at the same time, I start the book off with the first set of chapters for a reason. Those are really to guide decision making. 2 through 6 are really to guide your decision making. And the first one's just the intro. The next chapters are really the how to make a decision, why to make a decision, and helping you through that. And then the latter chapters are how to navigate the environment. So there is a structure to the madness. It might seem, here's one concept, but it's really meant to be, start from a decision. How do I make a good decision? First off, what is a good decision? And how to determine that, and then make that decision, and then how to navigate the environment in which you work. And then that's when I go into more of the organizational dynamics and politics of things. So yeah, no, I'm glad that you enjoy it. That's the number one. If you enjoy it, it's good. If people don't enjoy it, it's not good. So I do try to relate things outside of my own experience, current events, some politics, maybe even, enjoy it.
Well, we will. I did. I know the listeners will, and it's worth the time to read. I think you need to get it on Audible. That helps. I would just say this: thank you for joining us today. Lots of great insight. You're very articulate at what you're saying, and I found the book to be very useful for me. It did get me thinking. And so with all my experience and knowledge, you did share a few new things with me that I found very valuable. So thank you very much. And I appreciate you being on the show today and sharing your wisdom with us.
Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.
All right. This is a Strategy Sherpa show. We're going to take a break, and we'll be right back after these messages.
Welcome back to the Strategy Sherpa Show with David Chavez. Have a question for David or his guests? Join us on the show at 866-472-5790. That's 866-472-5790. Now, back to the show.
Hey, everyone. This is David Chavez. It's the Strategy Sherpa Show, and welcome back. Love having you here. and very excited to have Noah Johnson just on the show. What a really thoughtful person. I love how he described his book. I did read the book. I really enjoyed reading it. He gave me a couple things to think about, and the things he was talking about was right what I was thinking about when I was reading the book. I was sitting there asking myself, who in my world is taking on too much and not really focusing their energy and time where it needs to go? I think that's what he was really talking about. And if you have the passion, it's worth going through the pain. If you don't have the passion, it's probably not worth going through the pain, because what it'll end up doing is causing pains everywhere in your life. And he calls it decision fatigue. And I do like that, decision fatigue, because it's one of those things where you're having to deal with all these decisions that you don't have a passion for, and it's not really driving you or motivating you. It's more of a hardship. And I know in my businesses, as I've grown them, if I didn't have the passion, I probably would not have had the staying power to stay in the business the way I ended up doing. Because the passion carries you through the harder times when you really need to get yourself together. I would also say that businesses chase too many things, and Jim Collins talks about it in the Good to Great book as the fox and the hedgehog. He uses these two metaphors. The fox to me is like a squirrel. I watch squirrels all the time jump around from thing to thing as they're discovering things. I was watching a squirrel the other day in my backyard, and he's getting acorns, and then all of a sudden this bug landed, and he decided he was gonna investigate the bug, and then something else happened. I can't remember. It was something else, and he just kept on jumping from thing to thing, and I was going, man, it's like a lot of business owners jumping from thing to thing and not focusing their time and energy on what their business is. And what I see quite a bit is what Noah actually talked about is going started in another business and another business. And they have so many things going on. Their core business isn't getting the focus and attention it really needs. And I like how he talked about really thinking about what you're trying to do and how you're going to do it, and so you don't get burnt out, and really understanding the why behind what you're doing, because he did talk about that. So I think it's a lot of valuable lessons in his book, and I do like his play on good to great, that it's good enough. What he's really trying to say is that where you're thinking that you're going to be great, sometimes maybe a business that accommodates your life and what the way you want to lead it or have it may be better for you. And that's an individual choice. As I told him when I was we were on the call together, that I do have business owners that decide that they don't want to grow their business. And one of the things they say to me when they make this decision is, are you upset with me? It has nothing to do with me. It has to do with them and what they really want. And if that's what they really want, I'm happy for them. Just because they decided not to scale their business, we're scaling coaches, but that doesn't mean it's wrong or it's right for their life. And that's really probably the most important thing. I just loved, I love his lessons, and I love the book. And I think that if you're really struggling with some of these things, like you're overwhelmed, you're trying to figure out what's important to you and what's not, I think this book is really worth it. He wrote it for military people, because a lot of people get out of the military and they wander around a little bit lost. I just did a speech for a group of veterans not too long ago, and I run into a lot of veterans who think they understand what they want to do, and then they realize they don't really want to do what they were doing. And I think that this gives you a platform to start to think about things in a different way. And one of the things I loved about college is that it taught me how to think. And I think that that's what he's trying to do with this book, is get you to think about what you really want in your life and how are you going to approach that. And he does talk a little bit about health. And we had Michelle May here a couple weeks ago, and we'll have her back in about 4 or 5 weeks, I think it is now. But I've already read her book once, and I'm going through it again now. And it's really interesting because health is a very important aspect of all of this, because if you're not healthy, your brain doesn't work as well as you would like it to. And so the decision fatigue, if you will, comes into play just from a health standpoint also. So I really appreciate him coming in and spending some time with us. A lot of valuable lessons in his book, and he shared candidly how he felt about everything. But let's go back over some of the things about Strategy Sherpa. We are going to do a webinar on May 23rd about mastering efficiency, process-driven tactics for cost savings. Processes are so critically important inside of a company, and making it, being able to scale. He's talking a little bit about that. That's May 23rd. You can sign up now. Scaling Up Workshop in Portland, May 8th. Ted and I have been scaling up coaches for about 15 years now. We're going to be doing this workshop together, so there'll be a lot of insight for you in this workshop. Warren Sagers on the 4th of April is going to be doing Improving Your Cash Position, the 7C simple key financial levers that do that. That's 1 to 2 Central Time. And then on this Thursday, I'll be doing a Scaling Up workshop in Austin. We do have a spot left, so if you're interested, please feel free to join us. And this is the Strategy Sherpa Show, where we talk about what business owners did, what the mistakes were that they've made, and we're not sharing those mistakes to rub it in their nose. We're sharing the mistakes so we can help other entrepreneurs learn that mistakes are part of the game. This is David Chavez. Thank you for joining us, and we hope you'll join us next week for DJ Allen, and he's going to be talking about his book, The X's and O's of Success. All right, thank you very much.